But thank you, Stephen, so much for the introduction. Thomas, I might just get you to recap quickly in terms of who you are and what Tines do, and we can go into it from there.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's a real honor to be on stage. Yeah, I'm Thomas. I'm one of the founders of Tines. Tines is a VC backed business to business software company. We're an intelligent workflow platform, so we allow businesses of every size, from small startups all the way up to the Fortune 10, to power their most important workflows. So we combine AI, automation, and integration to drive real business value across our customers. And yeah, we're Irish, and we've got hundreds of people all across the globe.
Perfect. We're going to keep this kind of fairly punchy, just given the time that we have. And the goal really is to understand how Irish companies are developing, positioning and selling sort of world-class and world-leading AI products. So I suppose in terms of setting the scene for where you guys are at now, just to kind of give a little bit of context back from that VC back piece, any kind of key product launches, or when people are thinking about how they apply Tines, what are kind of the critical problems you're solving?
Yeah, I think like everybody else, like AI has transformed the way Tines works and transformed the way like businesses work. So as a workflow automation platform or an intelligent automation platform, we've for the last like 7 or 8 years, we've allowed businesses to automate their repetitive manual tasks. Suddenly AI came in and like changed how people are able to do business. And the good news is that like AI is able to do pretty much anything. It's a little bit scary. And there's a lot of people that will be like, yeah, okay, but what should I use AI for? And that's the question that we've tried to ask and tried to answer, and that everybody in the room should be trying to answer. Like, what is it best at? And the way we think about it is that there's really, prior to AI, like 2 different ways of doing things, like human beings doing things or pure code doing things. So those like deterministic workflows. Human beings, exceptionally good at strategy, like good at judgment, good at understanding business decisions. Code, scalable, fast, reliable, will happen the same way, or will do the same thing every single time. AI and like agents, so giving an LLM access to tools, it kind of provides a combination of both of those. But it's not necessarily the best at judgment, and it's not necessarily the best at like certainly scale. It costs a lot of money, and it won't necessarily do the same thing every single time. So you have to decide like, hey, what is it good for? And when we're thinking about it in our product, and when people are thinking about it in their products, it's about understanding like, where to plug it in. And rather than thinking about it as a product, thinking about it as another tool in that trio of the types of workflows that you can use. So in Tines, we've built it to allow you to leverage all 3. And increasingly, the products of the future, they're not going to be like Salesforce but AI. It'll be a product with AI where it's appropriate.
And I know in terms of the Tines context, obviously there's pieces that it can just do autonomously end to end in terms of connecting either via an API integration or whatever the case may be. But for people who are maybe a little bit earlier in their AI journey, how do you determine where AI can be an accelerant versus a gimmick or just overhyped?
Yeah, totally. So it's exactly that. It's understanding what it's best for. So if you examine like the type of process that you're trying to help with and the value that you're trying to solve, if you're value-based selling, you understand like, okay, what is the exact process if it needs to be. So we've like a framework which is like creativity, scale and safety. So like if it needs to be creative, AI or human being, you shouldn't be using code for that. If it needs to be like fast and scalable, you probably shouldn't be using a human being. You should be using code or AI. If it needs to be safe and you need to happen the exact same way every single time, then you should be like using code. You should not be using like a human being, or you should not be using AI. So when you're thinking about it, it's about like understanding a framework for understanding what AI is best at. And there's fortunately tons and tons of business challenges and tons of ways. Like customer service is a brilliant example. Marketing is a really good example. Like tons of processes, like, but doesn't have to be exactly right. There's tolerable like guardrails, there's like toleration of error. But if you're preparing a business like proposal, maybe that's okay. If you're onboarding a customer and doing KYC checks, you definitely shouldn't be using AI for that. It's too risky. So it's understanding the process and understanding what AI is good at.
We're obviously seeing a lot about AI in the news every single day, and we're also seeing some of the, let's say, mistakes is maybe a good analogy, but I'm hesitant to use that word on this stage. But some of the instances where maybe it was oversold, let's say, I can think of one in particular that was being, quite a sort of a bit of a snafu, even right up to a federal level. In terms of selling then into large legacy incumbents, which are still SaaS products or maybe quite conservative when it comes to data, privacy, security, how do you go about sort of pitching a product like Tines when it's unfamiliar territory?
Yeah, I think the very first question is to understand whether you should be pitching a product to those like legacy, like I'm not sure any company would like to be called a legacy company, but to like large organizations is understanding like what their risk tolerance is and how fast, like how forward thinking they are, and if you should be like you should always be selling to your ideal customer profile, and like the process of selling to a Bank of America is going to be absolutely a nightmare compared to selling to a Drata or an Auth0 or something like that outside, who are a lot more, I suppose, cloud first, tech forward, tech savvy. Having said that, if you are trying to approach, and we do have tons of those like large enterprises, it's about bringing them a little bit along the journey. First of all, AI is scary to everybody. AI doesn't have to be scary. So we use like Bedrock. That's an AWS tool, but it means that we can make claims with AI to say, look, there's no training, there's no logging, there's no storage. Your data stays in region. It's tenant bound. It's scoped just to you. And all of a sudden, their compliance team are like, oh, okay, that sounds a little bit more reasonable. Realize that you're selling the same way that you're selling another like tool or another product. You should be selling based on value. So you should never be saying, hey, I'm going to sell you AI. You should be doing your standard sales process. So you should be understanding the pain, understanding the decision process, understanding like what they actually want to buy, what the criteria are, and like building your relationships with those stakeholders. And then the third part, there is still a little bit of like there's a lot of excitement about AI, but there's an expectation that it's going to work like magic. So realistically, you're going to have to do a little bit more work under the hood to make it feel like it's totally seamless, so that when they get it, they do get that delight that you got the first time you used ChatGPT. You're like, wow, this is incredible. They should still feel that, but you're going to have to do some of the work. So that might involve like saying, hey, we're going to do the implementation, we're going to do the migration, we're going to do a ton of professional services to make sure that this is successful for you and that you feel that this is actually going to give you value, because ultimately, yeah, you want them to land and you want them to expand.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that land and expand piece? We obviously heard from the previous speaker about building these sort of monuments, and it's almost sort of what you guys have done internally within your customers.
Yeah.
Obviously starting that kind of cyberspace, but now looking across other business functions. How have you kind of gone about that in practice, and what can people maybe take from those learnings?
Yeah, totally. So the good news is there's a lot of frameworks out there for that. So if you're around, there's like the bow tie method is pretty much typically what we use, which is thinking about the land as just the start of your relationship with that customer, beginning with like awareness, decision making process, and then expanding. But the most important part is like understanding that if you want to expand, if you want to like get into some other parts of the organization, it has to begin with value. So you have to work so hard to make sure every single customer is a champion and every single customer is a success. And that could be just by making your product like 10x better, or it could be by making sure that your support team are fantastic, or it could be by saying, actually, you know what, we're going to run a full onboarding process with a project manager who's going to understand your goals, with the ultimate aim of like with Tines, the ultimate aim of saying, okay, the first team that we land in, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And if you're landing in a large organization, frequently you can have a good land, but realistically the expansion opportunities are enormous, and you want to tap into that. The other part, that's the first part, just in general, just make your customers wildly successful. They'll be your advocates and they'll share. The second part is when you're building your product, try to just think about the TAM from the very start. So that total addressable market. So we started out in cybersecurity, and maybe there's like in cybersecurity automation, $2 billion in spend. In enterprise workflow automation, there's like hundreds of billions of dollars in spend every single year. So if I decide to like pigeonhole myself a little bit too much in cybersecurity automation, I can do very well, but I'm never going to expand in those enterprises, and I'm never going to, like hit those like $1 million, multi-million-dollar deals. So yeah, from the very start, we became like a secure platform. We had like that foundation, but we also knew that actually when we're building, don't build too specifically. Make sure your product, if that is your goal, make sure that your product can fulfill the needs for those other teams, so that when you do get that opportunity, they have a good feeling about it. The other teams trust it, and they can they can grow with you.
Do you mind if we just kind of double click on that a little bit, and just how do you actually turn a customer into a champion, particularly when you're working with maybe teams that are a little bit more privacy conscious, a little bit more conservative in their thinking, very rigorous around their compliance because you're starting in cyber. So how do you get somebody who works in cyber to champion a product like Tines publicly and happily and freely, ideally?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I spent 10 years working in cybersecurity before starting Tines. The job is hard. Like genuinely, you've got like too much work. You've got alerts coming in from like thousands of different alerts from probably a dozen different tools. There's like not enough staff. I don't know any organization that says, hey, we've got enough staff. But there's also that sense that something bad is going to happen, and inevitably something will. You will get compromised, or you will have a large incident. For us, it was about then like those people. When you're a goalkeeper, that's kind of the job of a lot of cybersecurity teams. Your job is to defend. You don't really get a lot of credit. You like nobody is like, oh man, well, very rarely like. So yeah, yeah. Sometimes goalkeepers get a lot of credit, but like very rarely is it like, hey, they absolutely won the match. So as a result, like when a cybersecurity team can come in and say, check this out, I've just automated this entire process and I've just freed up a whole load of time. That's a win, and that's a win that those analysts and those managers and the chief information security officer can brag about. And if they're able to say, look, hey, here's the tool that I'm using, and like this is an innovative process that I brought in, they're like, that allows them to get promoted. That allows them to like celebrate, and that's not something they get to do a lot. That like giving them also like working, understanding their problems and helping them do it, but giving them the ability to brag about their job. If you're able to do that, like that's a surefire way for that person, like sharing your product and telling people what a joy it is. The other part was that like with Tines, we allow people to automate, but we also allow people to like to share, so you can share a service with other teams. And there's a lot of like in a security incident, for example, you might be like locking the accounts of 20 or 50 people. That's relatively easy to do, but a lot of the IT team will just be like, whoa, hold on a second, how did you lock those like 50 accounts? And we'll be like, or the customer will be like, well, we use Tines. And then the IT team are going to be like, well, how do I do that? How do I get my hands on that tool? It takes me like an hour to offboard every single employee. Can I just do it in 10 seconds? It's like, of course you can. So that natural like use of the product can be, it has massively accelerated and massively helped us like with that land and expand motion.
Can you talk us maybe about some of the challenges then? Because it sounds like from the outside, it's easy to look at a company like Tines and just see this sort of rocket ship growth. Obviously, you guys have made a strategic decision to co-headquarter Ireland, US. Can you talk to us a little bit about that global expansion, what that looks like, and maybe some of the trade-offs you've made along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots. I think if it wasn't for COVID, we probably would be completely headquartered in the US. But yeah, about a little over 80% of our customers are the US, and more of our revenue is from the US or from North America. So like it's definitely a trade-off to stay here. But like building a software company in Ireland, that's part of the reason we started Tines, so that we could build a company that employs and is has the ambition that we have. I think a mistake that startups always make, or certainly I don't want to generalize, I've made a lot of times, is believing that like if you build it, they will come. Build something great and you're going to be like wildly successful. It's never about that. It's always about getting like 1% better every single day and like improving. But as a result, like I suppose at the start, when we didn't have some great advisors and some great leaders, we made one or two decisions to like be a little bit more tentative. So we like dipped our toes into decisions. So a good example of a challenge, like we some of our earliest customers were the likes of like Canva in Australia, and we like made them like incredibly successful. And yeah, we had a couple more customers out there. We had a small team in the US. We had a small team in Europe. And we were like, okay, it seems like the next step is to expand to Australia. But we hired two or three salespeople, and that was good, but we actually weren't like wildly successful, because when you're expanding and you're growing, you actually have to invest. So you have to invest in like a marketing team, a partnerships team, a like field team, a business development team, and then you also have to invest in a customer success team, so that when you're telling customers like a large bank, we're going to be able to support you, their question is, how many people do you have? And you say 3. They're like, it doesn't sound like you're going to be able to support me. So we made some. I think we made some mistakes, I suppose. And yeah, we've definitely learned from those. But it's about, there's lots of trade-offs, but it's about like making sure that if you're making those big decisions, that you are actually like believing in yourself and you're backing it up correctly.
So I think that piece when kind of coming back to the belief, I know we were talking about it earlier, just this idea of sort of the transformation that we've seen in Ireland over the last couple of years, and this elevation of ambition. Also, obviously, we're seeing, deeper ticket sizes when it comes to investment and things like that, and really kind of Ireland punching above its weight. How excited are you about the Irish tech landscape when you look at it now?
Yeah, incredibly excited. It's amazing, and I think there's a few things. First thing I'll say is that if you're a startup, don't let I've heard the word success used a whole lot of times. Don't let anybody else define your success. Literally, just starting a company is like, that's incredible, and you should be massively proud of yourself for doing that. And if you start chasing the VC's version of success, you'll always be chasing the next round or the next exit, and that's it can be worth it, but don't let a VC or another founder or anybody else tell you that you're successful. Having said that, the ambition of some people right now, it's like really incredible to see. People are they're not satisfied in saying, hey, I just want to, I want to do this. I want to like expand to America. I want to expand to Europe. I want to land these massive enterprise clients. But the other part about it is, like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, we had some people with that ambition, but we didn't have that experience, and we didn't have that, people that had done it a couple of times. So if you look at the like some of the most high profile startups in Ireland, so the likes of like Intercom or Stripe or Wayflyer or like a whole load of others, like Intercom, like that team, the founding team, they had another startup. They founded Stripe. That was their second startup. Wayflyer was Aidan's second startup. It's the same with Bobby from Mana. It's the same with Pat from Sisu. Like, but not only that, it's the companies now that have exited. There's companies that have built that experience and that muscle of expanding, of building leadership teams, of building like recruitment teams, of building like massive customer support and customer success teams. What that means is that, now when you're saying, hey, should I expand to Australia? People are like, no, don't, not yet. Or they'll be saying, hey, should you, like, what's the process to like expand to the US, or what's the process to sell to a large enterprise? There's now teams in Ireland that have done that, and it's amazing to see that those executives like go on and start founding their own companies, and they won't fall into the same mistakes that we've made. They'll like learn from those, and they'll grow, and hopefully some Tines founders or Tines folks will leave and found their own companies, as hard as it will be to see them leave. But it's amazing to see the ambition of some of them, and they, I suppose that the confidence they have that they're going to be able to take that next step.
Yeah, I know it's fascinating whenever you do a little bit of stalking, let's say, on LinkedIn, just to see where people have kind of bounced around. I'm conscious that we're at time. So just, I suppose, a very last piece for yourselves. What's next with Tines?
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting time. Like we just saw OpenAI release their own workflow builder, and like we believe we're the leader in like workflows. So it's an amazing time to be a workflow platform. We're hiring like crazy. We just in the last like 3 months landed our 3 largest deals in the company's history. We're hoping to like almost double revenue this year, double revenue next year, and expand enormously. It's I'd love to say, hey, here's the like 20 features that are coming out. There's loads of features that were coming out, but realistically, it's just about it's strapping in and executing. But it's a really exciting time to be in Tines, and we're hiring like crazy as well. So come join us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Áine.